I'd like to call this meeting to order with a reminder that the actions taken this evening will focus on our students and their achievement. With that, I want to talk about item B on the agenda, the public hearing. I have in my possession an affidavit of publication showing that the notice of time and place of a hearing for the 2015-2016 school year calendar. This notice was published in the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier on April 27, 2015. The board will now hold a hearing. Is there anyone in the room that would like to offer any comments regarding the school calendar? All right, I'd like to close this hearing, public hearing. Moving on then to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve item C on the agenda, the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments?
I have a comment. We received the resignation this morning for a world language teacher. So we sent out electronically the addendum to the HR report. Typically, we don't make changes to that report, but given the rather short supply and the short amount of time left, we want to be sure we can go out to the market with a job that we know we need to fill as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. I know there's some hard copies over on the table if you didn't get one in your board packet, so you're welcome to those. We have a motion on the table. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to item D on the agenda, we have one individual that would like to address the board this evening. Jamie Petrie is here, and I'd like you to come up to the front, and you can visit with us. And thank you, Jamie.
Welcome.
Great, thank you. Good evening. My name is Jamie Petrie, and my family and I just recently moved into the Wild Horse Development January of 2015. I hope you all were able to receive my email and took a couple minutes to read some of our concerns that we're having with the potential boundary change with Wild Horse changing from Hanson to the new elementary school. At this point, I'd like to really just address a couple other issues, mainly about the future of Wild Horse and kind of the unknown and knowns with it. At this point in time, basically Wild Horse is purely speculation as to what's going to happen with it. It has taken 10 years to get from the point where it is right now. It's taken 10 years to do that. And a lot of the trouble with the progression of Wild Horse is with the passing of the land's developer, Denny Weikertz. So the land right now is currently tied up in his will. Even something simple as trying to connect the Skogman development with our Wild Horse Drive development with one connecting street has been planned to happen for over 2 years now, and has been unsuccessful in even connecting those two streets. Again, mainly because of the issues with the passing of Denny Weikertz. Another issue with Wild Horse is that if it was able to come for sale and if someone buys it and if someone develops it, it's also been stated that the city is requiring whoever the developer is to pave 12th Street out past Union and to also make a connecting outlet to this new development out past 12th Street out west. Both of these supposedly, according to my source, which I'll talk about that in a minute, Brian Winger, would be at the expense of the developer. So that's already, it's a pretty high price piece of land out there, and it would be at the developer's expense, which is also another big obstacle that is really kind of complicating really the future of Wild Horse. So shifting gears now down to the southwest area where the new elementary school is going, talking to Brian Winger, who's a local realtor and also the developer for Prairie Winds. He has said that between Prairie Winds, Prairie West, and the Arbors division, they are expecting 300 new homes to be built there in the next 7 to 8 years. That's a potential of 600 plus students that will be moving into those homes that are not currently in that area that will be going to the new elementary school. And as Brian said, that creates actual valid concerns about the new elementary school, which is supposed to be a 3-section school, actually reaching its out capacity in the foreseeable future. Now again, the difference with Wild Horse, all of our growth is pure speculation. Down there in the southwest Prairie Winds, Prairie West, Arbors is not speculation. It's actually happened. The land's been bought, the land's being developed, roads are being paved, houses are being built. So that's a lot more of a true concrete happening. So where does this tie in? So with us being in Wild Horse, our concern is that we were just rezoned from 2012. This is the second school we'll be shifting, and then in 2015 that will be the third school in 5 years. So, and bottom line, we're talking less than 20 students, which again in my email, it's a tough move with not having a larger number of students. And bottom line is we aren't really even addressing any of the true issues that the community is having. By us moving our 20 students, we're not addressing North Cedar being under capacity. We're not addressing Lincoln, Southdale, and even Orchard Hills over capacity. Hanson right now is under capacity. It's a 4-section school. In the 5 to 10 year projections, it's not supposed to be over capacity. So we're really, we're just kind of playing around with what's really the point and even taking a risk on moving our neighborhood, which is in much closer proximity to Hanson. It's currently just freshly in the last 3 years been rezoned to there. Why move these students? Again, mainly because it's on speculation. And the other legitimate concern is that if we do move them and the new school, which is actually growing, reaches over capacity, our neighborhood, which is on the outskirts of the new school district, very likely might be one that has to get moved yet again, likely back to Hanson, which is now the 4th change in potentially 10 years. So we're just asking that to, take these things into account and try to base it on data, not speculation, which truly Wild Horse is speculation. Look at the facts, look where it's growing. And ultimately, we're only 20 children. So I thank you guys all for doing. That's it.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for your email. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's good information.
Thank you.
I did not see Joan walk in.
No, the only other person that we had request was Joan Knock.
Okay. All right. Okay, moving on to item E on the agenda, the Secretary's financial report. Doug?
Okay, we'll go over the financial report for the month of April. And we have it up on the screen as well. You can see in the general fund for the month of April, total revenue was $10,681,754. The big piece of that is the district received its second half property tax allocation for this current school year. Expenditures, $4,137,735 for a fund balance of $16,464,125. And again, that is pretty close to where we were a year ago. If you'll see, we were at $16,139,000 a year ago. So we're tracking pretty much truly what we had projected. Here are the schoolhouse fund numbers. Revenue $345,585 with expenditures out of $503,929. That amount is the final payment for the Hanson Elementary School project, as well as the transfer to the sinking fund for the debt service payment that's due June 1st. As you can see, our ending balance was $7,358,582. In the physical plant and equipment levy, you can see we had revenue of the month of $1,299,000, and then there you can see the transfer in of the debt service from Fund 33 to Fund 40 plus the interest the sinking fund has earned for the month. Expenditures in PEPAL for the month were $153,501, and so we ended the month of April at $6,050,339. And last but not least, there's the student activity fund of $60,419 in revenue, and $109,755 on expenditures for a balance of $596,459. And in food service, we had revenue of $200,739 and expenditures of $281,665 for an ending balance of $433,894. And I would entertain any questions that the board may have.
Any questions regarding Doug's Secretary's financial report? If not, we'll put the report on file for audit. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Moving on to communications. Drew, student board report.
Oh, it's my last one. Let's see. I'll start off with Student Senate. We actually were able to do the teacher appreciation breakfast on Wednesday, and it worked out really well this year. We had a lot of teachers, plenty of food, which is always kind of worried about that. But no, it worked out great, and the teachers were very appreciative that we were doing it, and we appreciate all the stuff they do for us. Let's see. For upcoming events, we have band concert tonight, which I missed, so I could come address you, but they'll do fine. They always do. Soccer Tuesday night. The boys are at Xavier, and the girls are at home. The girls are at home against Xavier. And then Thursday we have tennis districts, which will do pretty good, I think. I firmly believe we'll win everything we do, but that's my opinion. And then Friday we have soccer. The boys are at home against Prairie, and the girls are at home at Prairie, sorry. And then Friday we have elections. And I never realized that both times I got to vote, and then when we took the step and I actually got to vote after turning 18, we are very lucky that we get an actual ballot, we get to put it in the machine ourselves, it's treated as if we were voting for President of the United States. And it's something I know only us and I think Hudson, or it might have been West, do. And I didn't realize until I actually voted how it actually is the exact same. With a few, when you're checking in, it's a little different, but otherwise it's filling the dot. It's completely helps you learn how to actually do it later in life. We have commencement on Sunday, and I hope to see you there. I kind of have to be there, but it'll be good. Both the speakers sound like they'll do a great job. And then I just wanted to say a few things as I was thinking about what I should say and kind of thinking about it. And I was this wide-eyed sophomore who was told, well, you get to speak at the school board meetings to these really big, important people. And I didn't know what it meant at the time, and I was nervous that first year. The time period I got to do this was actually it had a lot of different things going on. I got to see us looking at what to do with the high school to go to a bond vote, and that's something that it just take the perfect timing to get to see from beginning to end on how that would happen. And I'd like to thank you all for the chance to do it. You inspired me to get more involved in politics, and you actually, as a sophomore, I didn't know what I wanted to do in high school. I didn't know if I wanted to get involved with this kind of thing or what it'd be, but you, looking at the kind of things you have done, it inspired me to run for treasurer and then president. I could have done that without this opportunity you gave me my sophomore year. And that's all I got for you.
Cedar. Drew, it is my honor, on behalf of the Cedar Falls Board of Education, to present you this plaque of Certificate of Appreciation. It says, Andrew Stenson, in the grateful appreciation and recognition for your faithful service as student member of the Cedar Falls Board of Education. And I can't thank you enough. You have always been gracious. You have been here. You have kept us abreast of what has happened at the high school. You've been a good mentor back and forth between the board and your high school students. And for me in other ways too, just when we are out campaigning, working so hard for the bond. I can't thank you enough for all your effort. And I know your continued support. I know we have that. So on behalf of all of us, we appreciate you. And we have cupcakes afterwards, and you need to stay. And Drew's mom and dad are here, so I want to thank you for raising such an outstanding young man, and just let you know that we have appreciated every opportunity that he has had to work with the board. So, Drew, I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to shake your hand again and thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And Drew, nice job emceeing on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
It was all right. So, that's a difficult job to do, so nice job.
Thank you.
The other item on communications is School Board Appreciation Month. This is the month of May where we always have the opportunity to recognize and appreciate the work of school board members across the state. We do have certificates. This is a difficult job. It's a volunteer job that takes a huge amount of time, a huge amount of passion and dedication from people across the state, and for that you do not get the amount of thanks that you deserve, but this is the opportunity to say thank you for all that you do. And I'll go around and present these certificates. Jim Brown. Thank you. Yes, and again, thank you for everything you do. Appreciate it. Jeannie Weaver. Thank you for all that you do. So thank you. Susan Lance. Thank you. Kevin Strauss. Thank you. Vice President Steve Williams. Thank you. Board President Joyce Coyle. So, thank you. And again, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for your passion, your focus on students throughout the district. We know that the district would not be where it's at without your leadership, so thank you very much.
And thanks to each of you, my fellow board members. You really have a very important role, and we work really well together. And we have all different personalities, and we come from all different walks of life. But at the end of the day, our focus has always been on kids, and that's what's been always utmost important to all of us. So thank you for that, too. Thank you.
And to you, Joyce. Thanks for your leadership.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item G on the agenda. Jenna, if you would be willing to step up here.
My name's Jenna Miller, and I am a resident in Cedar Falls. I'm also the parent of 3 kids, one of them who has graduated and is in college, one at Holmes and one at North Cedar. I have to present to you signatures on the petitions that we have put out that are asking the Board of Directors to call for a special election for the school bond referendum. We have 941 signatures, and we needed 610. Wow. So I think that this shows overwhelming support within this community to have an election and try for another bond. We worked really hard. There were about 20 of us that got signatures. Drew especially did a great job gathering signatures. And we've gotten signatures from across Cedar Falls, residents in all neighborhoods and with students in every building. So we're really excited to present this to you. We've put a lot of time into this. I've been on the facilities committee for 7 years, and a lot has gone into getting us where we're at right now. Not just by us on the facilities committee, but also by all of you and the district. There was a lot of public meetings that were held, and a lot of information and input that has been gathered. So here they are. Don't lose them.
From you.
Yes. Thank you. Any questions for me? No? All right.
Jenna, your leadership and work and dedication and enthusiasm, when it's hard to have enthusiasm, has been absolutely outstanding and an inspiration to me personally.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you very much.
And unwavering.
Yes.
Unwavering.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you.
I think as everybody knows, as we've talked about now for a couple different meetings, the process is, as we've talked through this last couple months, that the community brings us the petitions to ask the board to put this into a ballot question on June 30th, 2015. We needed a certain amount of signatures, and that was 610 based on 25% of the people, the individuals in our community that voted in the last school board election in 2013. We have those signatures, and so it's our opportunity to move forward with the petitioners asking us to place this on the ballot.
Thank you. Great.
Madam President,
Yes?
in light of the fact that we have far, far more petitions than we need, I move that the Cedar Falls Community School District Board of Directors adopt the resolution ordering a special election on the issuance of $35 million of general obligation school bonds as presented.
Thank you, Doug. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Roll call on this one.
A roll call vote, okay. Any discussion? Questions? All right, moving on.
Okay, on the roll call, Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Dr. Shutoff.
Yes.
Mrs. Lance.
Yes.
Mrs. Leeper.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
And Mrs. Coyle.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
all right.
Thank you.
Moving on to item H on the agenda, the robotics trip.
Yes, we had I think everybody knows, a very exciting opportunity last year in August where we had a group of students and a group of adults that traveled to China for a robotic scrimmage. This year we have the same opportunity for students, and the hope is to ask the board this evening for approval for the robotics team. They're thinking anywhere from 8 to 10 students, maybe a few more depending on the number interested and able to attend during that stretch, to leave the Cedar Falls Community School District on August 12th, to spend roughly 9 days in China, traveling back on August 21st before the first day of school. There they'd have an opportunity to do some sightseeing in China, spend some time there with some of the students that they will be working with and competing with, and then spending 2 days on robotics training workshops. There is a brief agenda in your packet, and those will be with the students in Shenzhen, China. And those other mentors in China with the company that helped sponsor to bring our team over last year. And then they'll be spending 3 days in a robotic scrimmage with those students, competing with them side by side to help them understand the dynamics, the training, and what it takes to go through that scrimmage process to set everything up the right way and then compete at the highest level. It's a great opportunity for our students, another unique opportunity for our students to really engage in a cultural experience, number one. But then also have the opportunity to work hand in hand with students from the foreign country in a high-level competitive nature. The students from China, as well as their mentors, were here prior to us going to our competition up in Minneapolis and Minnesota, and spent 2 to 3 days with us. So it's really been a strong bond and a very strong relationship that's been built. And certainly Kent Schwartley has a lot to do with that. A great mentor, great educator that helps work with our robotics team. And certainly we will take roughly about 8 mentors to 10 mentors over there with us as well to help set up, to help work with the students, to help oversee this process. So, any questions?
Great opportunity.
It's been fun to see it. My oldest was involved when they first started, and
Yeah.
now to see where it is, it's a fantastic program. It really is.
Really is. And what we do systemically now too to help students prepare for that
Yes.
as they move through the system as they approach high school. That's exciting.
It really is.
Do we have a motion to approve the robotics trip?
It was also moved. Second.
Thank you, Susan. Good. Jenny, second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to item I on the agenda, approval of the 2015-2016 student fees.
You'll have in your board packet and also up on the screen our recommendations for student fees for the 2015-16 school year. You'll see with textbook fees, we're recommending no change in the fee structure for next year for all grades, kindergarten through 12. On transportation, we're recommending a $2 monthly increase in transportation fee. As a reminder to the board, that fee is for students that live inside 1 mile for elementary students, inside 2 miles grades 7 and 8, and inside 3 miles for grades 9 through 12. And that fee is determined by a formula which ties to the district's previous year's transportation report. And so it directly hooks to the district's cost per mile as we determine the fee. In instrument and rental, we're recommending a $5 increase in the rental of instruments for students. We're working on trying to improve a little, the equipment a little bit, some of the instruments that we're renting out are getting a little long in the tooth, and it's, we need to be able to help generate some funds for those oboes and the big things that the district supplies for the kids. In activity passes, no change is requested for this year, and in food service, we're recommending a 20-cent increase across the board for both breakfast and lunch as well as adult, with the exception of milk, which will hold steady. And you'll note that when we'll deal with the contract for milk for next year later in the agenda. So with that, I'd entertain any questions the board would have. Or Mr. Conrad may want to chime in. I guess not.
We do study other districts on our, especially on our textbook fees, to see if that we are comparable to where they're at, and that's why one of the reasons we're not recommending any increase for next year in textbook fees.
Dan, are we using fewer textbooks than we used to per student?
We're working in that direction. You know, we have several of our, especially at the high school, our teachers are looking at online resources as opposed to a printed textbook, which we are encouraging.
And
Great-
some
great
students,
question.
if they can't afford these, there's help.
Right, there's a reduced fee
Right,
and
that's what I thought.
a free fee, and of
Right.
course,
Right.
by board policy, we waive those fees as individual families qualify.
Do I have a motion to approve the 2015-2016 student fees?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item J, approval of the 2015-2016 school year calendar.
Deja vu. Or round number 2, I should say. Obviously, the process with this, if you recall, roughly 3 weeks ago, we had the governor sign the calendar bill on a Friday. We came back and approved the calendar on a Monday. We received guidance from the Department of Education on a Wednesday that said you need to have a public hearing. So we don't like to go about this process, but we've had, I think, very positive feedback on a calendar, which is sometimes hard to receive because there's always varying opinions on a school calendar when you look at start dates, breaks, and end dates throughout the school year. But we've had some fairly good and positive feedback from this. We don't like to have a public hearing and come back and approve something on the same agenda. We try to avoid that as much as possible. But just right now, with the timeliness and the thought that we might not have public comment tonight, just due to the fact we've had good feedback and positive feedback, our hope was that we could approve the calendar for the second time, since it's already been approved. That way we can reassure all of our parents exactly what the calendar is going to look like, the framework, the start date, the end date, so people can start planning their vacations as appropriate. So we do present the calendar, we do recommend approval, and just a reminder for everybody, the start date would be August 24th. The end date currently, pending snow days, would be May 27th, and then the set breaks intermittently throughout the year.
So no built-in days?
No built-in snow days, no. All the snow days would be tacked on to the end of the year. Years past, or the last several years, we've had one built-in snow day in that late April, mid-April time frame. This year, we would not have that, and we would just tack that on to the end.
Right, do I have a motion to approve the 2015-2016 school year calendar?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Any further discussion?
The only thing I would suggest is that after the 27th of May, putting one of your little lines for the end of the third trimester and fourth quarter,
Exactly.
like you've done on the rest of them.
And highlighting the dates.
Yep, that's the only thing.
Yep, because they should have been highlighted and they weren't on this copy.
Yeah.
So, yep, because we talked about that last time, to have the snow days be added on to 31st, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd.
Right.
So, yep,
Thank you.
yep.
Thank you,
Okay,
Susan. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving to item K.
We're ready to move into year 3 of our district technology plan. And we're recommending 2 purchases for this upcoming school year. The first one you can see up there is for student Chromebooks. We're looking at purchasing 800 Samsung 2 Chromebooks. Those Chromebooks are going to be distributed to 7th and 10th graders.
Yep.
Correct?
7th and 8th graders.
And we're also requesting 18 carts because we will be taking some Chromebooks from the secondary and then they'll move down to the elementary level, and that's why we need the extra cards. We sent bids out, received 3 quotes back, and our recommendation is to accept the low quote from CDW-G at a total cost of $207,200. And those are, by the way, the Samsung Chromebook 2s. That's what the district has specifically specified. On the other request for this coming summer is for the staff laptop replacement. If you'll recall, in the original technology plan that was approved by the board, in year 3, the staff laptops are due to be replaced. About 3/4 of the staff have laptops that are 3 years old, and there's about another 25%, I suppose, that they're 4 years of age. And so it would be time to get everybody brought up to speed. We're looking at 550 laptops. We went through quite an extensive process on this. Shane Page, our supervisor of technology and information, surveyed staff on what they would like to see in a new laptop. And based on that survey results, the model was selected, and we asked for quotes. We received 3 quotes. Unfortunately, we had to throw the quote out from Tiger Direct because it did not meet our minimum specifications as designed, and that was in your board packet. And so our recommendation would be to select a low quote again from CDWG for a grand total of $400,950. Payment for all of this will come out of a combination of 3 different pools. It will come from the remainder of our, if you'll recall, 2 school years ago we received the 2+2 money, and it's the +2 money which was basically the seed money that sort of kick-started the whole technology plan, so we'll be using the remainder of that up. We allocate approximately $150,000 each year out of the instructional support levy for technology improvements, and we'll be using that money as well as physical plant equipment level money. We haven't exactly determined the percentage of how that's all going to shake out yet, but those funds, 3 funds combined, will be picking up the cost of this. And there are a couple of additional expenditures that will be coming out of next year's tech plan. There'll be some technology server improvements and that sort of thing. We're looking at the possibility of a couple of labs yet. That hasn't been all determined yet, but we'll be well on our way to get this equipment here so that the IT department can have the equipment identified, marked, set up, and ready for the kids when they come back in August.
Labs using this equipment?
Pardon?
Labs using this equipment?
No,
Oh,
this
in
is,
addition.
no,
Okay.
that'll be
Gotcha.
additional.
Okay.
There'll be labs that need more than
Okay.
one
Okay.
Chromebook,
Okay.
such as
And,
our project lead-the-way labs.
Oh, okay,
Right.
okay,
We'll be determining that here in probably the next month or so.
okay.
So,
Is there a big difference at a high level, Doug, what we paid for the first time around for the staff computers, what we're doing now in terms of functionality that might compare to the pricing?
a little bit. One of the things we're going with the next round of the laptops is we're going to solid state hard drives. That did add a little bit to the cost of the units. You can see it was another roughly $28,000 for the total amount. That was one of the requests that came back during the survey process with the staff, was they wanted a faster boot time. I mean, the Chromebooks, you flip them open, within 3 or 4 seconds you're up and running. Where with the laptops that the staff currently have, it's the old traditional hard drive, disk hard drive. And solid state, I'm fortunate enough that even though my machine's 3 years old, it has a solid state hard drive, and I'm up and running in about 15 seconds. And so that was one of the requests Another thing they wanted to continue to have the CD drives in their units. There was some talk about maybe we would need that, maybe we wouldn't need that. And in the end, it was decided that it would be best to continue to have CD drives available for those staff members that need them on a consistent basis. And then there was a little bit about screen size, and so we ended up settling on, and I can't remember the exact size it would be in the specs.
15 inch.
15.6.
Yeah, okay. There we go, right up here.
And is there just sort of an industry standard that we replace these every 3 to 4 years, or just something we came up with through the committee?
That was we're following the original recommendation that was made to the board and that the board approved for the tech plan. I would say to you, 3 to 4 years is pretty typical. And we find that with the use that our staff are giving, especially those staff members that are in their 4th year, we're starting to see quite a few aches and pains with those. So it's just time to turn them.
Well, hopefully keep an eye on that. I mean, we don't always go back 4 years ago, or 2 years ago, 3 years ago, what we recommended, as times may change.
Correct.
I mean, my work computer lasts me 8 years and it's there, but
No, I can appreciate what you're saying. There are some very interesting things coming down the pipe that both Brian and Shane have been talking to Kevin about at a very high level, and exciting times with technology and where we may be headed in the next few years if we can balance the cost against the needs. So.
mhm.
I can't remember, what do we do with the old computers? Where do they go? The old
We
laptops?
typically will, in some cases, those old computers will go to classrooms where they may want an extra computer or two for use in the classroom.
Okay,
So obviously, if there's any district use, that'll be first
Okay.
on the list. A lot of times, we'll save some of those computers and put a few of them on a shelf just for parts.
mm-hmm, okay.
And then the rest of them will either be sold at auction or junked, for lack of a better way to say it, because there's no value to them.
Chromebooks will actually move down. The ones that we're replacing right now will move down to the elementary, so we'll have more and greater access at our elementary levels. Not quite 1-to-1 where we want it in all of our elementaries, but certainly it's going to be a greater 1-to-1 ratio, at least a smaller ratio for our students at the elementary level.
And I-
Extremely exciting.
But when you talk about in the future, we are going to, in about another year or two, we're going to have an issue with the original round of Chromebooks that we purchased. They'll be coming up on 3-4 years old. And we'll have to make some determinations at that point whether they're still a functional device or not. And then how are we going to dispose of 1,200 Chromebooks at one shot? And Shane and I are talking about some different ideas, thinking outside the little box a little bit, and still meeting the requirements of the Code of Iowa, but yet also living in the 21st century and how you can possibly dispose of something.
Do companies ever take trade-ins? Probably don't.
With these, no.
And a lot of times not. A lot of times you can build that into the contract when you look at, or if it's a lease contract or a purchase contract, with whether or not the company will purchase them back after the end of 3 years or 4 years. And what we're finding, at least what I found when we were doing this in other districts, that they were getting much more hesitant about purchasing back computers after 3 to 4 years, just because they don't know what kind of shape they're going to be in or what kind of capacity they're going to have.
And they had, at our last district technology, I missed this last one on Thursday, but the previous one, they had some examples of what the staff computers, and they were lighter. I think if I remember right, another thing was they had a longer battery life, and they really did have a nice size screen. I want to say they had a bigger screen than what you've got,
Probably,
maybe.
yeah.
but-
Portability was a big factor this
Mhm.
time around. We want to have something that people are comfortable moving around because, again, our staff utilize these 24/7 in all different locations, and we want that.
Well, it's important to note apples to apples, because you can see them online for $250, but it's like buying a minimum car and a decked out car, or just something that's needed.
Correct.
No pun intended with the apples.
But the nice thing about the process this time was there was a lot of staff survey work done, a lot of input from staff, and in a lot of cases, the simple majority rules, because, the real debate was like with the CD drives and units, and the staff came back and said, we'd really like to see those, and so, okay, we'll accommodate that. And they're the end users of these devices, and we want to be able to have them be as efficient and maximize those devices at the greatest possibility, so there we are.
giving high schoolers the option to keep their Chromebooks this summer?
Yes, we are.
Okay. How's that?
We're gonna pilot it. We'll allow the high school students, basically the 10th and 11th graders, to check them out for the summer. They'll have to sign permission slip from the parents, and we basically talk to them what their responsibility is during the summer. So we'll see how this works. If it goes well, we may look at expanding that in the future. We're just gonna allow the 10th and 11th graders to try it this summer.
Good question. Good question, Jim. Thanks for the discussion. Doug, anything? Susan? Dave? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the technology purchase?
Moved.
Thank you, Jim. Any further discussion?
I didn't get the second.
Jenny.
I'm sorry.
Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the milk bid.
Okay. There we go. Okay, if you'll recall, a year ago, we received, when the board approved milk bids, we only had one bid. And at that time, we talked to Anderson Erickson about the possibility of doing a 2-year bid, but they wouldn't guarantee the spread. And what the spread is, and I have it up on the screen, is by contract with Anderson Erickson, the price that we pay for milk per bottle changes from month to month depending upon the federal market order. And this is, in essence, what our spread was when the board approved it last summer. Well, Anderson Erickson came back to us about 3 weeks ago and said to us that they would lock the spread for another year if we would approve in May. And so we said, okay, is it gonna go up or is it gonna go down? And they said, it's not going down. So because Anderson Erickson is the only dairy that we can buy from, that we can purchase milk from in plastic bottles, it would be our recommendation to continue the contract with AE for the 2015-16 school year. And should we decide to ever go back to cartons, the wax paper cartons, we can pick up a second quote, but we're of the opinion that we can get more kids to drink milk if they're in plastic bottles versus the cartons of milk. So, and we've been plastic bottles now for about 8 or 9 years. So it would be almost archaic in some people's opinion if we went back. Not mine necessarily, but some people's opinion.
And we do recycle all the bottles as best we can.
Yes, and at some expense to the district, we do recycle all the bottles, yes. So it'll be our recommendation to approve a contract with AE for milk for 2015-16 school year, and you can see the prices up there as per the letter we received from them last week.
I move we accept the bid.
Thank you, Susan.
Second.
Thank you, Doug. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the first and final reading of board policies.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the policy committee members to help out if that's possible with this one, because this, there are a couple different pieces here, and so I'm going to speak kind of large picture. We have a cycle every 5 years where we review and look at the policy numbers and policy series, and this is the first year of our 5-year policy rotation. We have 10 series of policies, so this year we're reviewing series 100, 200, and 300. We lump those together mainly because they are not as typically time intensive to review as when you get into the 400 students, 500, 600, which is staff and faculty, those different series. So we'll spend more time as we go through those, and those will be handled probably as one series in that 5-year cycle. This year, we have a few changes, some that are very minor in change and some that have no changes at all within the 100, 200, and 300, and that's why it's the first of one reading. By Iowa code, you just need one reading if you have no changes or very minor changes, and that's why we have it listed as first and final reading of board policies. The next agenda item is actually first reading of one of two, because they are either new policies or have substantial changes to them. And we'll talk about those once we go through this first phase. Within the 100 series, you can see that the first policy, and I won't go through all of these by any means, especially ones that have no changes, but 100.1, there is just one change, and that's underneath the as graduates of Cedar Falls students, the fourth bullet down. Instead of competent users of technology, it's skilled utilizers of technology. We really wanted to bring that up to a higher level with the expectation that with our technology plan, we expect kids to have higher levels of skill and certainly higher level expectations from the district standpoint. On the back page, or the second page of that packet, it goes into our administrative organizational chart, and that has changed over the last several years. There's just some restructuring, so that just reflects current practice. There was a transitional period last year where we tried some different things and some new things, and then added some different positions, and that's reflected in that organizational chart. Within the remainder of the 1 of 1 reading, there are no additional recommended changes in the 100, 200, or 300. However, there are some new policies that we're recommending from ISAB that we did not have. The other policies with the past review that was, I believe, done in 2012, there were no recommended changes or updates that as we went through those. However, on page 51 of 54 in the packet, you will see that there is another policy that's 1 of 1, and that is 605.4, electronic technology acceptable use by students. We are not recommending any changes to this policy. However, we're asking just to review this policy because coming up here in O, we're going to ask to set a public hearing for the Child Internet Protection Act, CIPA. Long story short, with CIPA, there is a requirement. We receive something called E-rate, and E-rate helps offset the cost for connectivity, some of our phone lines, and some of the costs associated with technology. And districts are required to have a public hearing on CIPA. We cannot find where, as a district, we held a public hearing on CIPA. And within this policy, it specifically mentions by federal code that we will follow CIPA with the Internet Protection Act, and that will protect students with reasonable protections for student use of technology. So there are no recommended changes to that, but again, we're recommending that we do approve that as just a review to be able to move forward so we can update and have the public hearing on CIPA. Does that sound reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you want us to approve these first and then move on to item N?
Yes, so.
So I need a motion to approve the first and final readings of board policies 100 through 200?
100, 200, 300, with the minor changes
And
in
6.
605.4.
605.4.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Good. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on again to the approval of the first reading of board policies.
Yes, and there are 7 policies that we have recommended. The policy committee reviewed these, looked at these, made some changes. Hopefully we captured all those changes. If not, please let us know so we can make those changes going into the second reading. But you'll see the policies that we have listed is 204.6, public hearing. That was something that ISAB has recommended that we do not have within our policy codes underneath the board policy or the board section of the policy. We are recommending that we add 205.4, administration in the absence of policy. This is a fairly new ISAB recommended policy, but in case we come up against a situation, and I'm not sure what the case was in Iowa code, but obviously there was a case where there was an absence of policy and either the district did something that wasn't, or they failed to make a decision. This just says that administration will make a decision in the absence of policy and then come back and create the policy, and the decision will be made around past decisions as well as what is in the best interest of students in the district. We're recommending 206.1 be added, and that is the Board of Directors Legal Counsel, and just outlines the expectations with legal counsel for the Board of Directors. This is a policy that's really been recommended by ISAB for several years, and again, we're recommending that be added. 401.5, recruitment qualifications and selection of personnel. We're asking that there are really some substantial changes within the middle section, 3 paragraphs added to that to allow all information to be considered, and this just opens up the fact with in today's world, social media, networking sites, blogs, and other aspects, that can be used as pertinent information as we go through the hiring and retention of employees. In this day and age, that's becoming more and more relevant and more important. And that's something, again, recommended by ISAB. And then underneath the last page, there's an additional bullet point, which would be a new Q, and it just talks about satisfactory outcomes on post-offer pre-employment testing, and where applicable pre-assignment testing allows people to qualify for positions and offers, and that is in alignment with our current practice. New policy 401.18, notification of arrest, criminal charges, child or dependent adult complaints. This is something, again, that is recommended by ISAB, aligns with the expectations many employers and have for employees, that notification occurs if there are arrests or criminal complaints that have been made. .2 is vacation and holidays, and we're asking for that to be changed to align more with some of the private employees that we compete with. And you can see that the change would be from a proration of 1 week starting year 1, going to a proration of 2 weeks, and instead of then 1 week of vacation for years 1, we would go to 2 weeks, and then we'd expand that to 3 weeks, 6 through 12, and 4 weeks, 13 and above. And just again, aligns with the private sector. And then finally, we're having some substantial changes to 403.6. First and foremost, changing the name, desk lockers and storage areas, to workplace inspections. It just means that we are providing many more electronic devices, computers, and other aspects to all staff. And if and when there is a need for inspection of those items, that the district has the autonomy and the ability to be able to search those items for any such need. And this is, again, recommended by ISAB, as these policies all are. They've been reviewed by attorneys throughout the state, and certainly allow us to be more aligned with current expectations.
Do I have an approval of the first reading of 4 new board policies and 3 substantial additions to other policies in the 400 series? Do I have a
So
motion? Thank you, Susan. And thank you, Jim, for a second. Will we be bringing these back on the 26th then?
No, we won't be meeting on the 26th. That's one of the things
Okay.
we need to talk about, to set when that next meeting could be for a work session. But the thought would be we'd bring it back June 8th.
Okay.
Is that our next scheduled board meeting?
Possibly.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe it's June 8th.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Doug?
We got a major logic problem.
Okay.
403.6, workplace inspections.
Mm-hmm.
Last sentence.
Mm-hmm.
I believe 2 changes were made which canceled each other out. Right now we're saying, except in cases of emergency, the employee will be required to open the personal belonging. That means in cases of emergency, the employee will not be required to open the personal belonging, which is the opposite of what we want to happen.
Yes. I know we made some changes in those.
Right, the problem is we
so-
made 2, which became unfortunate. Yeah.
So
So,
it should read what, Doug?
I would suggest deleting similarly, except in cases of emergency. So starting the sentence, if it is believed that an employee has a prohibited item inside a personal belonging, the employee will be required to open the personal belonging when asked,
That's a better way of putting it.
yeah,
Okay.
without the except if it's really important exception.
so second sentence, similarly except in cases of emergency.
Just delete all of that. And then I believe it says what we want it to say.
Adrian's the one that really helped construct all these, so I wanted to verify with them, so, yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Always good practice.
Yeah.
Any other discussion or
Well,
comments?
I would like to say that, you know, I've been on the policy committee for a long time, and these guys do an amazing job of keeping on top of what's required for our district, finding the resources, finding the information, verifying it. We spend a long time when we get together, the policy committee, hammering it all out, but thank you so much for what you guys do behind the scenes.
No, thank you guys.
Amazing.
Well, the time you invest to read them, go through them, and correct us is a lot of time invested, so thank you for doing that.
Goes both ways, thank you.
All right, and yes.
I have a question about 402.2. That looks
one's
like
that?
402.2 is vacation.
Mm-hmm.
That looks like about a 2% pay increase for the people that get this week. And about how many total weeks are we adding? How many employees does this affect, for example?
Adrian, are you able?
I'd have to do the review to come up with the exact number of that.
I'm just trying to get a feel for, are we going to have to add a person or a part of a person to make up for the vacation?
I don't anticipate that we will. The reason for bringing this forward is that over the last several years, we've had a number of occasions where we've had to try to fill a position. And unless we're able to bring people in that have no experience, then we want to try to hire someone with experience. And oftentimes, we don't compete on salary, even sometimes with other public sector organizations. And so then when maybe the person already has 2-3 weeks of vacation built up, and they have to give that up and then start partway through the year, maybe with a proration of 1 week, conversation oftentimes is stopped at that point. So the intention is to at least make us evenly competitive on vacation. The salary issue will be a longer task, I suspect, but I don't anticipate that this is going to result in us being short-staffed.
Okay.
I think the reality is oftentimes, even with the vacation schedule we have, an unnamed person in this office actually made that comment. They struggle to take the vacation they already accrue,
I checked that rule.
which is a different problem.
Right.
But at least we won't be turning good people away because we're not a competitive.
Question. Thanks, Dave. Any other questions?
Well, I'd say the other caveat to that is the overlap really is about 1 year in there where it's going to bump people up when you
good
get into
point.
the upper. So it was 2 to 7, now it goes 6 to 12. It was 8 to 13, now it's 13 and above. So it's just
Good
kind of,
point. Thank you.
you know, because we're going to go from 5 categories to 4 categories, so we condensed it a little bit. But just as a,
And to Adrian's point, I suppose it would be too difficult to be able to have it so that you could negotiate for a mid-career employee the vacation. I suppose you don't want to go there down the
Well,
road.
the board, when we last updated this policy, the italics under the table, you've afforded the superintendent the latitude when necessary to be able to do that. Well, the reality is the frequency with which we were having to negotiate
So
on
often.
the 1 week, it was happening so frequently, I said that should be telling you something. and
Okay.
That's why I brought it up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good questions. We have a motion on the table. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving on to item O on the agenda. Setting a public hearing for the Child Internet Protection Act, SIPA. We're gonna tag team it?
well, yeah, we kind of did rock, paper, scissors on this one, and we never determined who was going to be the speaker. Really, it's kind of what we talked about before. For us to be, I guess, up to the expectation of the federal government, there was a requirement for us to have a public hearing on SIPA. And as we go back through 2000 to look for that, we can't find a public hearing. And again, not good, bad, or indifferent, and we abide by all the expectations required from SIPA through all of our E-rate applications and processes and in those aspects. But we just know that we want to ensure that we have that in place as we move forward, so we can make sure that that has been done correctly in the right way. We are not in any kind of a violation for the expectations of helping and protecting our students by any means. All the policies are in place, all of the procedures are in place. This is just to now set a public that we receive from the federal government.
So after the public hearing, are we going to be voting on whether or not to continue? I guess, what are our options? What are we voting on, yes or no, after the public hearing?
We're basically just holding a public hearing in order to be in compliance with the regulations. By the board reaffirming 605.4, we've been complying with SIPA since that policy was originally developed. It's just that for whatever reason, the public hearing, to have all the record research that we've done in the business office, we can't find that everyone was already held.
So really, there's no action following that. You just hold the public hearing and see if anybody has any questions or comments about Children's Internet Protection Act, which really it's kind of really foregone conclusion because it's an expectation. It's a federal government policy. It's just holding the public hearing that this is something that we will continue to do.
And then we don't have to have another one again.
Gotcha.
It stays forever.
So do I have a motion to set the public hearing?
I move that the Cedar Falls Community School District Board of Education set June 8th, 2015 at 7 p.m. as the date and time to hold a public hearing on the provisions of the Children's Internet Protection Act, SIPA, as enacted by Congress at the James L. Robinson Administrative Center, 1002 West 1st Street, Cedar Falls, Iowa.
Thank you, Dave. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thanks, Jim. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of setting the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Moving on to item P on the agenda, facilities update.
It's really just an ongoing dialogue to have the conversation, to help answer questions about those next phases with our facility. Just some informational pieces. We sent out a postcard just to start the process, the information pieces to the community. Here in the last, it goes through bulk mailing, so it actually went out about 4 or 5 days ago, and it just takes that long to get out to people. But I think some people received that on Saturday, and other people probably today. We are going to have James Seaman come back to our community from Fielding there to help with the next phase of some community meetings on some of the planning that they're doing for some of our elementary work, and that'll be May 27th and 28th. This past week we went through and held really frequently asked questions video segment sessions with some administrators across the district, Doug and I, as well as some other people throughout our community to ask or answer questions in a small segment format that we can air either on TV, we can put on social media, we can have as kind of commercials and smaller segments that just answer a lot of those questions. There are anywhere from 20 to 25 questions, and those are being finalized right now so we can help people really understand some of the nuances and help answer some questions that might come up. So it's been a lot of work. Janelle's done a tremendous amount of work, as well as people around this table, and we certainly appreciate that. I know on a recent website I visited, there is a timeline and a countdown, and I think it's, 7 weeks counting now to June 30th, which coming quick. So we're trying to get as much information out as possible. Throughout the public forums, we heard from multiple people that they want clarity of information. They want clarity of information. That means consistent clarity of information, and that's why we're trying to get ahead of it much sooner, as well as through a consistent format, so it's going to be spread out over several weeks.
I'm going to give a shout out to Laurel Shaw because she has really helped put together the community website, the public website, and she has went back and they pulled together some resources from the previous bond and clarified questions and asked us questions and asked the district questions to make sure that the right answers were posted out there on their website, and she's just really done a great job with that. So as you peruse that site, if you have an opportunity, if there are things that you want to see or you think we should see, make sure you filter them back to her. I was wondering too if it would be helpful if Janelle maybe at our next board meeting would maybe share with us maybe the plans for the district and how we're gonna roll those out too. So we're all aware of just, how we're gonna kind of march this forward, if you all would like to hear that.
We have a Google Doc that's been created that kind of goes through a lot of finite steps, and we can easily go through that and share that with everybody, because it's very detailed in orientation with multiple different pieces of communication, multiple pieces of where we're going to embed dialogue and hopefully engagement, because we want to be extremely transparent, extremely detail-oriented, and make sure that all bases are covered.
Is that something you would like to have us do? Okay.
Any idea then, the 7 remaining weeks, how many flyers the district plans on putting out?
We will have at least another, and again, flyers I want to lump together, and Janelle can speak better on this than I can as well within that Google Doc, but we're also going to do flyers, the different postcards, as well as some, oh gosh, now I'm drawing a blank.
Brochures.
Thank you, some different brochures, so.
Yeah, we're gonna do a mailing, the end of this month, it'll have 2 absentee ballot request forms and just, kind of like top things to know about this bond. And then in mid-June, we'll send out more of a kind of full newsletter piece. It'll have 30 more questions, the full tax calculations, things like that, and then it'll be the final postcard as a reminder, right?
We've been-
Just a publication piece anyway.
And that's the district side, and then we've been working closely with the community side as well to where those are at and where their pieces might fit in. So there's multiple layers.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
A couple different items on the superintendent's reports. We have a retirement reception Wednesday, May 20th at Pheasant Ridge, 4 o'clock. Certainly invite all board members to come if you'd like to be there. Commencement is May 17th, 2015, and that is this Sunday. Not put a time down, but I believe it's at 2 o'clock. Yep, 2 o'clock.
1:30.
Yep, be there at
Park in the
1.
back there.
You
Park in the
can.
back if you get there early enough. No one direct you in.
And we have the 2 board members, Susan and Jenny, that will be there up on stage, so thank you for volunteering to do that. Administrative Board Retreat, June 10th, 9 to noon, so we'll have that here at this office. Boundary update, and the hope is, as you know, we've had a boundary committee update and our meetings the last several months to look at the process and data components around that. The hope is to have a board work session, and we had tentatively scheduled potentially, and this is back last June, where May 26th was a if needed board meeting date, but we're not going to have our full board able to attend that, so we need to look at some other dates where we can have that work session. There's a lot of information, a lot of dialogue that needs to occur, and a lot of data that we just need to go over. So the thought would be we need to find a date potentially that's going to work for all board members where we can hold this work session with RSP in attendance to be able to have and start this dialogue. And I can send out some doodle dates, but one of the dates was maybe the Monday before our June 8th board meeting, which would be Monday, June 1st, potentially if that works for board members. And that's something that we can do some doodles on and some other aspects, but I'd want to make sure we communicate this out to our public as much as possible, because we want them to be able to be aware of some of the dialogue and certainly some of the conversations that we're having.
Will the boundary committee be meeting before then?
No, right now that they are finished with their work, and what they came forward with after the last meeting was their proposed map. However, there are some areas that were left, I don't want to say unfinished, but some items that were so close within the voting that they said, well, this is an item that the board needs to look at, review, and be able to have that dialogue and discussion.
So would we be able to tweak things as our speaker suggested if we were going to decide to do that? Would that be the time that it would happen?
I think during the work session and going through the data, making sure that we listen not only to some of the information that the committees represented and worked on, but then also our representatives that were on that committee from the board and some of the dialogue, because they could certainly talk about some of the tabletop discussions. You know, there were a couple areas that they said, you know, we need to have that discussion as a board, because they are close enough for an area that might have been shifted late in the game, or late in the process, to be able to start having that dialogue with the close enough voting process. I think one of the changes was 11:10, and it happened several times. So the board needs to have that dialogue and discussion.
And then after that, would we be voting on something at that time, or is that when we would kind of
Not in
discuss
work
things?
session.
No, not in a
We
work
don't,
session.
so then we would discuss what we want to bring to the
Right.
board meeting.
Yes, yeah, that's the
Got it,
format that
okay.
I would like to follow, just because I think this is hefty decisions. We need to be able to have this as a board, to be able to have that discussion before it's brought for a vote, my opinion.
Okay.
So,
I'm just kind of perusing, you're looking at, I saw some of you looking at your calendars. Is that first date,
Perfect.
is that, can you thumbs up, Jim? Are you okay?
Before the meeting, before our school board meeting on
The
8th?
first,
it'll
Oh, the
be
first.
There is no
First.
board
On the
meeting.
first,
June 1st.
That should be good.
in the evening.
Jenny, you looked, okay, in the evening?
Mhm.
Okay, and gave a high five, and
I gave a thumbs up.
thumbs up,
technically.
sorry.
Yeah.
Dave?
Looks good so
Looks
far.
good. I'm good, so the only person we need to communicate with would be
Oh,
your cabinet and,
with Dr. Kenyon,
Yeah, yeah.
cabinet, and then make sure that RSP can be here.
Okay.
Sure. We'll
So-
verify that and hopefully get that out to everybody here in the next day or so, and then start publicizing that date.
okay,
So,
thank you.
Andy, one thing that was kind of in the mix at the last meeting was the committee wanted to know how the board was going to get information. And I think RSP heard that, and so I'm just mentioning it again so that we get homework out for the other 5 members, so that Dr. Kenyon and I aren't expected to repeat everything that we heard over 3 months.
exactly.
That'd be good.
In RSP, typically what they've done, at least their format through the committee work, is kind of put together a PowerPoint, and assuming that they'll send that out ahead of time, similar to what they did for the board work session back in February. That was kind of the board homework. That way you can see some things, and we'll ask them about that process too.
Okay?
So,
Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, and I'd be glad to maybe interact with them so we don't get too much detail and try and find the right. Of course, that still wouldn't stop you from asking detailed questions, because RSP would be able to answer those, but try and focus on the key points.
Okay.
And then one thing I'd like to mention is RSP at the end of the last meeting did a survey, and I think it was 70% of the committee thought that they did a good job. Was it 10% did excellent?
I think the 2 outliers were excellent 5%, basically terrible 5%, and then
Yeah.
like average 10%.
So
and then
they-
good.
You know, they got a B at least. And I would also say that the committee was outstanding. They spoke their minds, they were polite, they listened to each other. You could see opinions changing, and when there was a toss-up, it was acknowledged, and that's why there'll be some things coming to the board.
And this is tough work.
Yeah,
It's emotional work.
it really is.
And it's very difficult to remove the personal feelings associated with this work, and the committee really did a nice job trying to remove that personal feeling, because again, it was representative of parents. It's individuals that have students that were affected and are affected through this work. So it's a challenge. Never easy.
Now, did they still come up with 2 alternatives, one with a successful bond and one?
No, we moved forward with the 7 Bond Elementary, not with the 6 plan. We walked through that, I believe, starting in about the 3rd meeting, and you could tell quickly we couldn't get there, and that was very evident due to the fact that new data came in, new enrollment projections came in. We are going to be over capacity with our low enrollment at our elementaries within about a year. Medium capacity at our elementaries within 2 years. By the time we could have this become effective, because it won't be effective next year, that's way too soon. When you start looking at 6 elementaries, you're moving students from one building that's over capacity to another building that's going to be over capacity. You just move, basically, it's like shoveling water. You can't do that. It's just impossible. So it was very evident, very obvious. What 4 of our 6 tables did when we asked them to come up with a plan for keeping 6 buildings intact. 4 of the 6 tables actually started adding on to buildings and saying we're going to maybe add on here, or we're going to change this building to be able to increase capacity. And that certainly is something we wouldn't want that committee to handle or have the scope of, because our facility committee has been working on the building, the facility work for years, in fact, almost a decade now. And those people know our buildings, know what's possible, what's not possible within those structures, and certainly we wouldn't want to have that work be shifted from that facility committee to this boundary committee. So it was just very evident very quickly that it just wouldn't work, because it's just moving kids from one building that's going to be, if it is over capacity, it's going to be moving those students to another building that will be over capacity because you're shifting them.
Thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Patty? Thank you. Moving on to questions, comments, or concerns from the board. Anything? Jenny, have a great weekend. Enjoy your graduation. Open house is over.
Mazel tov.
Drew, enjoy your graduation and your open house every moment. It's that next milestone. You send them off. It's a good thing. We've raised our children to get to that point, and we want them to go off and be independent and self-supporting.
Trying to make her cry or what?
No, no. I had a high school math teacher tell me that once. You know, this is what we want them to do. This is what we want them to do. So, don't forget, we have cupcakes in celebration of Drew's last board meeting with us. And I should maybe say Board Recognition Month, maybe. So, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, we are adjourned.